Hi everyone, I'm just going to do a quick tutorial on creating an assessment. I am just kind of in my basic course shell here. I'm going to use my toolbar to the side to go ahead and go under course tools. And I'm going to scroll down and find tests, surveys, and pools and select test. When you do that, you'll see build test or import test. I'm going to go ahead and do build test. And this is going to give me kind of the starter shell or the starter casing for my test questions. So we're going to do test sample 1, a description if you'd like, sample, and then instructions. So I'm going to say this test is 50 questions, and you will have 60 minutes to complete. I really can't spell today. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and hit submit there, and you can see test canvas, test sample 1, the description, test sample, and then instructions. This test is 50 questions, and you will have 60 minutes to complete. So that's just kind of the basics. You can see it says this test has no questions. So now it's time to add and create questions. So I'm going to just hit create questions here. When you hit the create questions, you see that there's a lot of different options that we have. Calculated formula, essays, fill in the blanks, hotspots, matching, multiple choice, short answer, true, false. So those are all just options that you have when you create your test questions. So I'm going to go ahead and create a multiple choice. Oops, I had multiple answer, so let me go back. Create multiple choice. And you can give it a title. So I'm going to just call it months of the year. And my question will be, how many months are in a year? Okay, so that's your actual text that the student will see. And you have some options here as to how you want to number and orientate. I really don't change those very often at all. If there's multiple options, you can give partial credit for answers and then show answers in random order. So I'm going to just check that so you can see it. I would not recommend using random order if you use answers such as 2 of the above apply or all of the above apply, because when it changes that random order, then that might not necessarily be the best answer at that time. So just so you know, make sure when you use random order, it's one concrete answer, not multiple choices that could be correct. So I'm just going to put 12 here, 10 here, 8 here, and 4. So those are my answer options that the student will see. You can do, if the student gets this correct under feedback, you could put great job, or if they get it incorrect, remember there are 12 months in a year. So that's just an example of how you could do feedback if you'd like to. You also could categorize. This is very advanced. I'm not going to go into the categories and keywords. I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. And now you see my question. So how many months are in a year? 12 is the one with the green check mark, so that's the one that is going to mark correct. And you can see my correct and incorrect feedback that the student would get. Now, over in the point value, see it automatically defaulted to 10 points for the question. Just have to be aware of that. Sometimes maybe you only want it worth 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, half a point. So make sure that you're aware it defaults to 10 for each question. So I'm going to drop that one to 1 point. There's also the option to hit extra credit. So if that's activated, that will be built-in extra credit in the test. And if it's unchecked, then it's counted as regular credit question. And then always hit submit. And you can see here that question is now worth 1 point and all of the details. So this is an example of a multiple choice question. Now you could go back up to the top at create question where I showed you previously, or you could just hit this plus sign here, and it's going to give you the option to create more test questions. So I'm going to go ahead and create a true and false. And again, you could do a title if you'd like. I'm not going to this time. I'm just going to put the sky is blue. You do not have to put true false. It will mark it as a true false for you. And then you have your options for your answers. False if it's false, true if it's true. And again, you have the option to give that feedback depending on what they put in. And and hit submit. So now you'll see my test question 2. Up at the top here, just notice that it says total points, and that's 11 because remember it automatically defaulted that second question to 10 point possible. I'm going to just change it to 1 and hit submit. And now you can see the sky is blue, the answer is true, and it is out of 1 point. So if I go to the top now, we'll have 2 questions worth 2 points total. So that's your multiple choice, your true false. You can also do essay, and we'll just say describe the steps in scanning a patient. That's very basic and not even a really realistic option, but you could put that as your question. They would have to type in an essay, answers. You can put sample answers, step 1, blah, 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 so on, so on. And then if you had rubrics, you could attach them. Again, I'm not going to go that deep into it. But if I hit submit, you'll see that there is a third question now. And again, it defaulted to 10, so I'm going to change that to 1. And if the student would not see the correct answer there, or my step 1 in my text, they would have to type in their answer. Those ones are typically hand graded because of the length of them. So those are options, couple options that you have when you do entering in your test options. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. Now my 3-question test is here under my tests. You can see test sample 1. It has not been deployed because I have not used it yet, and the date that it was last edited shows up as well. So that helps you to really be aware of when you make changes and what's the most recent test, say you duplicate a test. You will also notice that there is an import test option. I'm just going to click on that. Those ones are currently set up for our purposes right now, especially if you're new to Blackboard, to where it's one that you've exported from the Blackboard system and you're importing the same type of file. It is very, very complex, complicated system to try and put anything else in here. So for current purposes, just knowing that it would have to be something was exported from another Blackboard shell to import the test into this shell. So I'm just going to cancel that because I'm not going to do that at this moment for this one. This is more for creating a test. Now, if I've created this test, I, for example, may want to launch it or deploy the test. I'm going to go just to course materials as an example. And what I could do now is hit assessments here and then tests. And I'm going to go ahead and use this existing test. So I highlight the text there and hit submit. And you can see your basic information here. This is when you've already created the test and you want to go launch it. You have to make sure that you make all of this available to your students. So I always show my instructions to the students before they begin the test. Usually there's a password and stuff related to that, which I will go over in a second. Do you want to make this test available? Yes, I do at this time. You can set a timer as far as date restrictions to that as well. Add an announcement for this test. I'm not going to do that. Allow multiple attempts. Normally I do not for an exam. But if you do, then you could allow multiple and you could select a scoring option, which I'm not going to do. Force completion. So if this is a time test and you want it to be completed in a certain amount of time, then you can hit force completion, set your timer. Whenever you set your timer, it defaults to 60 minutes, but you may want to do 30, 40, or 50, whatever works for you. I always select auto submit because that will force their completion within 60 minutes. If you don't, then it allows them to go over without forcing the completion at that time. This is where just below that, your display after and until, you would select, your very, very specific parameters if you're restricting the time that this test is available. So this one has 3/23/2020, 4:35, and it'll display it until, we're going to go with 5:30 p.m. Okay, so very strict time limits. If you are working with passwords, you don't want them to be able to just go in at that point in time. You want them to have the appropriate password. You can check password, and I'm going to just make mine ABC. So now students would not be able to access this test without having the appropriate password. You can do a due date if you would like. I'll make it due today, by that day, and do not allow students to start this test after that time. So that's in case you've left it open. They would not be able to start at that time. You can include the test in your score calculations or not. That depends if you're using gradebook, so I will not go into that. And then under show test results and feedback to students, you have the option for them to see a lot of things different ways. So after submission, you could have it to where they can see the score per question, see all the answers, correct answers, and submitted answers. You'd have to check feedback if you wanted them to see that. A lot of it just depends on what you would like them to see. If I don't want my students to look at it outside of the testing center, I will do one-time view only. So it's while it's open. When they close it, viewing is gone. Sometimes I will do specific date, like 5 years from now, to really keep it private. And under test presentation, you see here there's options so they could have all test questions available all at one time, or you could select one at a time, prohibiting backtracking. So that means that they see question one, they answer it, they can't go back and change it once they've done their submission. So either one, whichever works right for you, and then you can randomize the questions. So those are your options. I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. Let me change this to after submission, make my life easy, and then hit submit. Now you can see sample 1 test. I'm going to go ahead and turn my student preview on just so you can get an idea of how students would see this. We're going to go to course material, sample test 1. This is all the information, and it tells them that this is a time test, that you will have 1 hour, that it will save automatically when the time expires. It will force completion. It gives them all those details as they begin. I hit begin. This is their password page, and remember I said it was ABC. They type in their password, hit submit, and it will take them to the test. So this just gives you an idea. You can see that the timer is starting to count down because this is restricted as far as the time. This one I set up as where they had to answer it and they can't come back. So they really have to be selective. So true, and then you can see that it's saved over here on this right-hand side. Hit next. Okay, and now 12. And you can see I can hit save there where it would have said saved, and then arrow over. My final question is the scanning question. I'm just going to type a bunch of letters in there, and then I'm going to hit save and submit. And then it says click OK if you want to submit the assessment, or hold on, let me return to that test and hit cancel. I'm going to hit OK. And this is what the student would see. I'm going to click OK. And again, they're able to see these answers now and the correct answers because of the way that I had the test set up. So I hope this helps you get started with tests. There's definitely a lot in Blackboard that we can work with, but this is a good starting point as far as making an assessment. Thank you.